Hi everyone, I hope your lithosphere assignment and quiz went really well. Now we're moving on to the next section. We'll be talking about the hydrosphere. So if you remember the hydrosphere from our introduction, hydro means water, so we'll be discussing water basically, and eventually what resources we get from the hydrosphere. I'm sure you can guess. Alright, so how much of the water on Earth is fresh water? So let's think, if there's all of the water would be 100%, how much of that is fresh water? If you want to have a longer discussion, pause the video, take a few guesses. I'm going to give you the answer in a few seconds. Alright, so how much of the water on Earth is fresh water? Only 2.5%, a very small amount of fresh water on Earth. This is why it is so important to take good care of it. Alright, so here's what we're asking ourselves today. We're going to ask ourselves what resources are contained in the hydrosphere. It should be pretty obvious what resource we're going to be talking about. How do watersheds function? So how do watersheds work? And how do waters circulate in the ocean? Alright. So, at the end of today, you need to be able to explain the factors that affect how water flows in a watershed. Let's get going. So, the hydrosphere, too far. More than 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered in water. Water is found in oceans, seas, lakes, and rivers, but it's also found underground in the atmosphere in the form of vapor. So, the layer of water enveloping the Earth on, in, and above it is called the hydrosphere. So, the water, again, if you remember from the introduction, yes, we can see it. If we can't see it, it's in the air or it's underground. All of that water counts as being part of the hydrosphere. Alright, let's keep going. Water is a precious resource. Only 2.5% of the water on Earth is fresh water, and 79% of this is frozen in glaciers. You'll see over here we have a picture of one. On land, fresh water flows in lakes and rivers as well as underground. So, inland waters refer to water found in continents as opposed to water found in the oceans. So, inland water, like literally think inside the land. So, a lake is an inland water. Okay, a pond, inland water. Inland waters are all the freshwater bodies found on continents, uniting rivers, lakes, and groundwater. So this water falls to the earth as rain or snow and runs into streams and so forth. Alright, a watershed is an area of land in which all inland waters drain into the same larger body of water. So, all of the lakes, ponds, rivers, streams, those sorts of things will drain into the same area. That's a watershed. Okay? The limits of a watershed, so where a watershed starts and ends, are determined by natural boundaries such as high mountains, hills, or some other kind of high ground. That's how the flow of water is determined, right? So it's not going to flow up a mountain, it's going to flow down it, these kinds of things. Alright, so these boundaries are called watershed divides. The natural slope of the land causes water to flow in the same direction. A watershed includes any number of sub-watersheds, okay? So, there are three in Quebec, three main watersheds drain the whole territory. So we have the St. Lawrence River, St. Lawrence River watershed, the Hudson Bay watershed, and the Ungava Bay watershed. So St. Lawrence River, Hudson Bay, Ungava is up here. If you were able to follow the cursor, I'll do that again. St. Lawrence, Hudson Bay, and then the Ungava is up there. All right, good stuff. Keep going. So here are there are 5 factors. So there are 5 factors that are going to affect how water flows in a watershed. So look at this first one, topography. So the shape, slope, and terrain of the area. For example, a steeply sloped land drains easily. So if you look over here, we have all these mountains. Well, I would bet that all that water runs down this way and into this stream or river. Okay, so the slope of the land is controlling how quickly the watershed drains. Next one is geology. So that is the type, depth, and structure of the rock. So as an example, water is going to flow more easily through holes and gaps in crushed rock than it is through compacted clay. So this isn't really a natural formation, but when we build a French drain and we want water to flow from the top of the ground down into this pipe under here, we get rid of the soil around it because that soil is squished together and has less space between its particles, so the water has a slower time to flow through it. What we do is we put all this crushed rock in here, river rock, so there's a lot more holes and the water flows really freely down through this particular part and into our drain like we wanted. So if you think about this in a natural setting, some soils are going to drain really easily and others are going to have water pool on top of them and things like this, just based on what they're made out of. So our third factor that affects flow in a watershed is climate. So rain or snowfall, winds, and temperature. So those sorts of things, just the general climate of the area. So for example, water is going to flow more quickly after a rain shower than after a drought. So here we can see it's been raining a lot and there's really nowhere for this water to go because there's been so much rain, so now it's pooling on top. Whereas if they had gone through a drought, so a period where no rain for a long time, it would just get soaked up right away. Vegetation. Its density and diversity. So how much vegetation there is, how much different vegetation there is, and how thick it is. So for example, when it rains, the surface water runoff is slowed down. So it gets slowed down on wooded areas on riverbanks. So if you look at this image, we have the side of a hill here. One side has been clear cut and one side still is forested. So which side do you think the water is going to flow more quickly on? Yeah, so if you guessed the deforested side, the clear-cut side, you guessed right. Because all of this vegetation over here, all this forest, so the brush and all the little plants that grow under the trees and these sorts of things, that's all going to slow down the flow of water. Whereas on the side that's been completely cut away, that water just runs down over the earth, nothing in its way to stop it from hitting the ground. So the last thing that impacts how watersheds drain is agricultural, industrial, and urban development. So I gave you a picture over here, the original drainage, and then when they started damming and diverting the river flows in the Cree community regions, we see the drainage now goes a completely different way from the way that it used to. So a dam can prevent water from flowing freely, so can other kinds of industrial and urban development. So here's what you need to be able to do at the the end of this lesson. Can you name the resources contained in the hydrosphere? It's actually just a resource. What is the resource in the hydrosphere? It's in the name. You need to be able to explain what inland waters are. And you need to be able to tell someone the 5 factors that affect how water flows in a watershed. Make sure that you can do these 3 things. We'll be moving on next time. Take care until then.